I'm Erin Murtha, the COO of OSec, and today I am delighted to say I'm having a conversation with Dr. Ed Harris, the CISO of Mauser Packaging, and we are going to talk about cybersecurity in 2025, what's in store. So, hello, Ed. How are you?
Hey, Aaron, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here and taking the time to be here. I'm really excited to be talking to you today. So to
Thank you.
start, I was thinking you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you get here?
Oh, man. It's an interesting story. I started off in television. My high school had television and radio studios, and I was working in a studio, and my job was to do the character generator at the end of the school board meetings, where the names would scroll up of who was running the cameras, who was the director and technical director. And I really, really got interested in that. And I'm thinking, you know what? Computer graphics is I think what I want to do for a living. Now, living on the East Coast, all of the computer graphics schools were West Coast out in California, and I'm like, well, I'm that that atypical poor white kid who's never going to make it out of the state of Virginia. So I started working on getting a degree in computer science. I figured I'd start with computer degree and then kind of figure out my way from there. Started in computer science. Took a job with the government in Washington D.C. Got my master's degree. Continued on from there. Went from a software development background to a networking job, and eventually into pure play security. And I've been doing it ever since. Now I've got my doctorate in security in cyber, and I love the field because it's just wide open.
Yeah, I mean, wow, how far you've come. Wow.
Yep.
I always love reading about where you are. You're in Barcelona, you're in Austin, you're in
Yeah.
Atlanta. It's really awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things that being that I've been doing this for so long, and I've built up a following. I actually have people who hit me up on LinkedIn, and they just like, Dr. Harris, where are you going to be at next? Because we want to make sure that we're there as well. And it's fun when somebody says, hey, we'd like for you to come do a speaking engagement in Barcelona, Spain, and oh, by the way, we want to cover your costs in your hotel, and we just need you here. It's going to make a difference. And I'm like, yep, that's I enjoy doing these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's just awesome. Thinking about 2025 and what we're headed for, I have to start with we keep reading about breaches. Nothing's changed in that
Right.
department. So I have to ask, is cybersecurity working?
So the short answer is yes, but let me qualify that a little bit, because cybersecurity is almost kind of built on a beach of shifting sand. As soon as we begin to nail an area down and we get it nice and hardened, just like a piece of glass, it's beginning to solidify. There's another component that hasn't been considered. And one of the things, that I've often looked at over time is, there's so much to secure. How can you be successful? Well, obviously you start with the common sense stuff and begin to work and build your program from there. Um, you know, we have to secure everything. The bad actor has to only exploit it once. And what we don't have that the bad actor has is time. They've got time, and generally they're well funded. And all it takes is figuring out an exploit, and then doing a quick search across the internet and finding out where those exploits exist, and then just start slowly working your way in and building that attack path into every organization that you can, and then kick them all off simultaneously. And the next thing you know, you've got a global outage, and you wonder, it's like, well, why isn't cyber more successful? Well, that's because we have to be successful at everything that we do, and the bad actors have to be successful only once.
Right, right.
So,
Well, given all this new legislation around cybersecurity, especially with the incoming administration, do you think that regulation is a good thing, or do you think it's not so much a good thing and we probably don't need as much as what's being discussed currently?
Well, when you think about regulations, you also have to understand who the target audience is. Most of those regulations that are written are generally written for the federal government, who is, while the federal government is well funded, they're probably less funded in cyber areas than you would imagine. How many times have you been a federal inside of a federal agency and see that they're still running like Windows XP, and even now Windows 10 is becoming an old operating system where we've got Windows 11. Do you think that they're staying on the cutting edge? I know they want to stay on the cutting edge, and the logical thing is you can have an ugly house on the inside, but you better make sure that all of your door locks work, all your windows locks. Do you have lights in your driveway? Do you have cameras at all the ingress and egress points? So legislation is good. It helps us get to a minimum standard. From a government perspective, I think one of the interesting things is it also helps some of these agencies understand that when they're putting their funding together, if they've got a compliance obligation due to a federal regulation, that federal regulation has to be funded. I know that there's a new executive order signed recently that says that you have to, and this came out from CISO, there had to be more scrutiny around third parties and interactions with third parties and attestations that you have to have with third parties. And so, that means that their budgets are going to go up because they have to account for new compliance obligations that these executive orders are designed to cover. And so I think it's good because it's beginning to strengthen our government agencies, and to the extent of how the regulation is written, there is a bigger push to also secure our critical infrastructure, which is another little secret passion of mine that if we've got a little bit of time, we can talk about maybe at the end. But if you think about it, how well protected is our security grid? Well, of course, we've got some protections. Are they the cutting edge? Maybe they are, maybe they are, and I can't speak to that at the moment. But those are things that are really important. Yes, it's important that NSA not be compromised. It's important that the Department of Energy not be compromised. It's also important that our water infrastructure and electric grid is protected. For all of the tax-paying citizens in the country. And so, yeah, legislation is important. And keep in mind, who are those folks that are writing legislation? Attorneys, lawyers, probably not as technically savvy people, but I'm sure that they've got some good knowledge or smart people surrounding them to help write the right type of legislation.
Right, right. That's a really good point you make. So to further this talk about legislation, we're hearing AI and everything. It's a buzzword to end all buzzwords.
Right.
I assume that there's going to be a place in cybersecurity for AI, but I don't know exactly what that would be or what that would look like, or what kind of organizations would benefit from it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, so let's take a step back from the word AI itself, because prior to the word artificial intelligence, we called it machine learning, and so we've had machine learning in our applications and technology for years. I mean, it's been in there for just years. It learns, what normal is, what does normal traffic look like. Firewalls have this type of machine learning. This level of artificial intelligence really kind of takes things to a little bit of a different level in that it takes that machine learning that the platform has gained and gives it a flavor of being able to interact with a human. And not all the interfaces are human driven, but it's certainly become the latest buzzword lately. One of the things that I think that there would be real value uh, by using artificial intelligence or business intelligence or machine learning is turning it loose on healthcare data. I would love to be able to take some historical healthcare data and say, we've got a child with this kind of cancer. Here's their health profile. We've got 35 children with different health profiles. what do they have in common, and let machine learning, let AI go through and read all of the little caveats in all of the little journals about the signs and the symptoms and the age and environmental exposure and all of those kinds of things, and see if there's some commonalities that they can draw. And I think that that would be really fascinating to help the medical industry diagnose problems faster. If you have a series of inputs, then it's easy to say, I can tell you what it's not, because there are certain things, certain types of cancers and illnesses and things like that that have certain markers and criteria. And if those markers and criteria aren't met, then we know that it's not certain types of cancer or medical illnesses and things of that nature. So I think there can really be a lot of benefit there. I also think staying in the medical field, pharmaceuticals. If you think about it, if we know, that drinking a Pepsi can help reduce your likelihood of, I don't know, I'm just going to make something up. Let's say it reduces your likelihood of stomach cancer, then 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 logically you would think, well, let's go break down what's in a Coke and break down what stomach cancer really is, and see where those correlations cross over and everything. And there might be some interesting data there that would tell you that it's not the Coke itself, but it's the brown dye that goes in a Coca-Cola. And instead of buying a Coke, you could just go, buy a brown food coloring or something like that. But there would be some interesting data that could be drawn from that if you give a supercomputer some time and some intelligence, and give it some data and let it tell you what it comes back with. We do have to be careful, though. We know that with solutions like ChatGPT, we know that we've proven that it's fallible. You can ask ChatGPT a question on Monday, ask it the same question on Friday, and you're going to get two different answers. Why is that? Because it's learned and it's evolved from Monday to Friday. And if it learned an erroneous answer, it doesn't know that the answer's wrong. It just knows that it has arrived at something that makes sense. And one of the other downsides that's created is the data then begins to train on itself, and it's learning and evolving based on bad data. How many times have you seen or heard about someone taking an image and making something that doesn't exist? An Earth with three moons. It might look pretty on a graphic, but it just doesn't exist. But ChatGPT doesn't know that. It just knows that it's something that was created from nothing. And then you've got the areas, and I talked about this in one of my recent talks. I said, if I've got if I've got a picture of your kid, if I know what your schedule is because I can read it off of your Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, I can discern what school that they go to. I can kind of get an idea about what your family schedule is. I have enough data to do a virtual kidnapping of your child. And that sounds terribly scary. And I talked about that in one of my in one of the conferences that I was in, and it really freaked a lot of parents out in the group who was thinking, it's like, you know, all you have to do is hint that you've got my child, and I probably would lose my mind. I'm like, yeah, but and you know what? The bad actors, as unscrupulous as they are, those are the kinds of things that are revenue generating for them. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good things that could come out of AI, but there's a lot of bad things that can come out of that as well. And one of the things that are being talked about in certain circles is responsible AI. How can you be responsible and ethical in your use of it in a way that doesn't harm people? And that's really it's a great concept to talk about. But it's just difficult to even fathom. How can I take something that's good and fun and exciting and keep it from being used in a bad way? I mean, God forbid, you can have an Oreo. It's my favorite cookie. But you know what? If I eat an entire pack of them, it's not good for me. But it wasn't meant to be bad for me. But it does if when it's abused. And so there's certainly a lot of things to still consider. We're a long ways away from having a handle on it. I think we want to have a handle on it. I think we want to have a confidence in it because it operates at a speed faster than the human brain. just in the way that it can consume and digest and then provide some level of feedback. But it should also be a little bit scary when not used responsibly. So
Right.
if you think about it, I mean, how do you come up with an attestation that a graphic is real and unedited versus something that you just created? I created a background for myself that I've got on my computer, and I love to camp. And I said, you know what? Build me a campsite with a campfire, make it in the evening, and put Sasquatch in the background. And and for me, that that's kind of a kick, because I love to camp and everything. And it generated a couple of interesting pictures, and I chose one that I like the best. And but you know what? I mean, but it doesn't exist. It's just something that I made from words, and AI interpreted that and built its own version of what that graphic should look like based on what I requested that there be in it. But what if somebody says, "Hey, you know what? I want you to uh, take a picture of Erin, and here's a picture of Erin, and I want you to put her in a car. And oh, by the way, whatever kind of car, let's just say Erin drives a black BMW 3 Series. I want you to park her car at a stoplight, and I want you to plot the picture of her holding a joint out the window." And you're going to look at that and say, well, that's me. That's never happened. I don't drive a BMW 3 Series. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's now the perception that you smoke marijuana and everything. And and if somebody were to say, well, I'm going to use this in a court of law, I'm testifying against Aaron because, well, I saw this because of the picture. Now we'll have to have some form of attestation that that picture was not created by AI and that it was in fact in its original form, which means we're going to start doing things like bringing in Samsung, who makes a great mobile phone, and Apple, who makes a great mobile phone, and put some sort of attestation that this was an image that was taken by a camera and it is as it was recorded, not manufactured by an artificial intelligence engine.
Wow. Wow.
And oh, by the way, do the same thing with an audio clip, because you can go download audio clips of your favorite actors and actresses, and then you can make them into your ringtones. You can make them into greetings for when you log into your computer and say, "Hey, Aaron, this is Matthew McConaughey. How are you doing?" You could you really
Right.
your mind is limitless in the things that you can do with it, but where's the responsibility for the actions taken?
Right. Right. Oh gosh. Wow. Well, on another note, so we have a lot of challenges for the year ahead. One of the biggest issues we always see in, well, our customers and across the board is that in running a security program, it's costly. And so one of the biggest issues is budgets. Beyond that, what do you think are the biggest challenges, well, that you face in a security program?
Well, obviously money is always a constraint. And then I can always buy tools and I can always add automation. What is probably the biggest challenge is the lack of skilled workforce. Now, understandably, we are churning out kids with cybersecurity degrees just as fast as these universities can turn them out. And one of the things that um, I've I've often talked about when I go and talk to kids at school is I ask them, I said, you know, how many is in your graduating class? We've got 700 in our graduating class. So you all look the same. You all have the same degree. Yes, some of you are more savvy in software development. Some of you are more savvy in business tools, and some of you are more savvy, playing with hardware. But on paper, you all look the same. How are you differentiating yourselves? And they're like, well, gosh, we don't know. We never really thought about it. So, well, let me tell you, an internship. What an internship tells me is that somebody else had an initial conversation with you and they got to the crux of what you were good at, and they put you in a program where you learn to work in a business setting. you get a couple of good internships behind you, and you've got some experience in a business world. And that looks great to a prospective employer when you're first getting out of school. But it's not just internships. It's going and aligning yourselves with security organizations. Go take the CISSP exam or the CISA exam, or be certified in Amazon security. Go take some certifications that prove that you have a minimum level of skills, and then start going to conferences. Go talk to speakers, listen to speakers, become a speaker when you've got, when you're to a level where you can contribute back, and you'll begin to build a following. And then next thing when people look at your resume, one of the things that they're going to ask is, what have you been doing? I talked to this one student, and I said, you know, tell me, you're getting ready to graduate from college. Tell me what you've been doing in your spare time. And this guy's like, well, I love to do a lot of coding and everything, and I work on a lot of projects for the university. But in addition to that, I go to the local elementary school and I teach kids how to be safe online when they go on the internet, and I provide them with materials that helps their parents reinforce those ideas, when they're at home. And I'm like, when you like cyber to that level that you're willing to give your time away for free just to be able to talk to people about it, those are two things that I can't teach. I can't teach you passion, and I can't teach you heart, but I can teach you everything else. But if I've got somebody who's passionate about it and they're just willing to do it for free just because they love it so much, those are the people that I generally talk to first.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's
yeah, yeah, we have so many jobs in the country, Aaron, that are just not filled today. Companies need a good, stable cybersecurity team, and it's hard to build that skill when you have no practical skills. That's why I encourage people to go and get certifications and get some hands-on experience. Go take some internships, work somewhere, even if you have to volunteer your time for free. Go work on the service desk, learn some customer service skills, learn how to talk to people, especially because you're going to get that call one day where you're going to talk somebody off the ledge because and this is the absolute truth. I had an individual at a company. He was working on a project, and not one time in 8 hours. And this was back before Microsoft Office had the auto save feature. Not one time in 8 hours did he hit Control S and save his document. And when his computer died, he was frustrated. He came up into the service desk area and he's like, "Hey, you know what? I need you to help me get this document back." Now, of course, there's some shadow tricks that I can do behind the scenes, probably to help him recover part of it, but I couldn't recover all of it. But I always kept a container of Tootsie Rolls at my desk, and I said, "You need to be prepared for the fact that I can't get your document back because you didn't take any responsibility to hit Control S not one time." I'll go and try to work a little bit of magic, but in the meantime, here's a Tootsie Roll.
I love that. Tootsie.
Yeah.
Well, actually, on that subject, sort of, without naming names, what's the biggest security screw up that you've encountered?
Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and tell on myself.
Okay.
It was this guy. It was this guy. I was working in the data center for a company, and we were bringing in some additional power into the building. And when you go up to a power panel, there's four screws, one in each corner. And I loosened all four screws. I loosened them, and then began to take screws out one at a time, to pull the panel off. Well, I didn't hang on to the panel tight enough, because when I took my third screw out, the fourth screw still being connected, the panel swung and hit the circuit breaker and brought down $1 billion organization for 13 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, I powered everything back on. I put the panel back. I called my boss. I said, "Here's what's going on. Machines are booting. I've got a ton of system checks. I've got to make sure that everything's okay because it just hard shut down databases and applications and and routers and switches were now trying to reboot and come back online and reestablish connectivity. It was an ugly baby, and I told my boss, I said, you know what, I'll I'm prepared to accept the ultimate sacrifice for this mistake. If you need to let me go, I'll totally understand, and I can just get my things and head out the door. He said, "Listen, we all make mistakes. Just don't let that one ever happen again." And thank God, after 30 something years in the industry, it's never happened again.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you won't let that happen again.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
and and
gosh.
there's certain and there's certainly bigger ones. I mean, the was it the CrowdStrike issue where a patch brought down major organizations, and I live in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and a major airline is located here, and they were offline for a significant amount of time to the tune of $500 million in lost revenue. That's a pretty big blunder.
Yeah,
Um,
say
yeah,
so.
it wasn't a $1 billion organization for 13 minutes, but it was a lot of money that was affected by a blunder. And I don't want to get into the specifics of what that particular was. We know it was a patch. We know that there was some protocol that wasn't followed, but and that's pretty significant because that company wasn't the only company affected. There were
No.
lots of companies who had
Yep.
the same eggs in the same basket.
Yep.
Diversify your portfolio.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, following your career, I mean, is like I said in the beginning, you are at this talk and this conference, and you're always getting another certificate or degree, or it's very impressive. You have a very
Thank you.
impressive background. And so I pose this question to you because I think you, out of anyone, would have great advice to someone who's about to start their security leadership position. What would you tell them?
You know, there's two things. Number one, you have to be comfortable with learning all the time. I tell folks, I said, the knowledge that I've got today is going to be functionally useless in about 90 days. So I need to stay learning all the time. And my knowledge cycles out about 4 times a year. And they're like going, wow, that's really a lot of learning. I'm like, yeah, but that's the nature of cyber. We're all of the time trying to figure things out. And that brings up the second thing is you have to be comfortable putting puzzles together. How many times has somebody come to you and say, "Well, listen, something happened and we don't know what and we don't know why, we don't know the scope, we don't know the scale, but you got to sit down and start figuring out. Let's just call it an incident response. You've got to figure it out. Who was patient zero? How did they get in? What happened that caused them to get in? Was a door left open? Did a drive-by occur and some software get deposited on somebody's endpoint? You have to go put the big puzzle together until you can explain the story in a way that makes sense, that supports all of the evidence, because everything is fact driven in cyber. You can't go on a hunch when there's nothing to back it up. So we start with evidence and then begin to build our picture to say what is the likelihood of something occurring based on the evidence that we have. Well, we've got evidence something did occur. Could they have come in through the window, or could they have come in through a front door with a broken lock? The fact of the matter is that they were caught in the house. There's video camera, video footage of seeing a bad actor inside of your house, and how they got there. Now you go and you start checking all of your ingress points to say, well, could they have come in through the front door, the back door, the garage door? Well, did you consider checking the windows? Because you've got 3 windows in your home that are ground level that somebody could have, jiggled the lock with a butter knife and come in through a window that way. And so you have to then go and you do your checks, everything being fact based, because at the end of the day, computers don't know how to tell you a lie. They just will say, um, at 3:51 in the morning, we had an unexpected login from a foreign country, from the CEO, but the CEO logged in 15 minutes ago from New Jersey. What does that tell you? Does that mean that the bad actor logged in from a foreign country? Does that mean that the bad actor could have pivoted to a virtual VPN in a foreign country and come in that way to point the finger at that foreign country? I mean, there's all sorts of what ifs, but you've got to learn to put the puzzle together, and you have to learn over time what are the right questions. Well, the only way you're going to learn to ask the right questions is experience and reading and studying and learning from other people's breaches and learning from their mistakes and figuring out what's going on. I read a lot of threat intelligence reports just to understand, what are some of these crime families doing and how are they doing it? Not necessarily what their motivation is, because their motivation is mostly money, but it could be other motivators. But the fact remains is that you've got to learn these things, and we stay learning. My team stays learning all the time. I make sure that as part of their weekly routine that they take at least 5 hours a week, an hour a day, and go learn something that they didn't know before to just simply expand their knowledge. And and maybe it's something that they don't use for years, but maybe it's something that they'll use tomorrow.
Right, right.
So yeah, always stay learning. Um, be okay with being a puzzler.
It's really great advice.
Right.
So now I've got our last question, which is if you weren't here, if you weren't in cybersecurity, where would you be?
You know, before I got into cyber, before I got into television in high school, I really wanted to be an aircraft mechanic. I wanted to be a crew chief for a bomber in the Air Force. That's what I really wanted to do, and I was planning to head that route. When I got sidetracked by taking a test, I really before even taking the television class, I took a class in radio, and one of the things that I learned by taking a radio class is how to speak while you're on the radio. When you speak with a certain with a level of cadence that you're not speaking too fast. You want people to have time to audibly digest what you're saying while you're saying it, but they still need to be able to keep their ears open so that they continue to hear what you have to say. So I learned to talk nice and slow when I'm speaking. I learned to speak with a little bit deeper tone in my voice because it's really pretty soothing when you're listening and you're trying to pay attention. And when I speak with this demeanor about myself, people at least look like they're digesting what I'm putting out. And so that certainly helped my speaking engagements. But I stayed in radio for like a half a year, and I'm like going, oh my God, I am bored to death in here. I learned a cool skill, but radio is not for me. And so I jumped into the television class, and I got to play with the production behind the scenes. I got to be a producer at one point where I produced some school board meetings for the high school. Obviously, not anything big time, but I learned camera operation and how to do certain shots and how to switch from one camera to the other during live broadcasts and things like that. And then I sat down. I'm like going, you know what? I want to run credits one night. I had never run credits before, and I got to watch all of the stuff scroll across the screen at the end of the evening, and I'm like going, oh, I like that right there. Computer graphics is what I wanted to get into. And then it eventually never got into anything close into computer graphics.
Well, thank
But
you for taking the time. I do have a lightning round, so let's start with that. And these are just very this or that type questions. Whatever first thought comes to your head, that's the answer.
all right.
So, number one, security awareness training, good or bad?
Oh, okay. Personally, I love it, and I'll tell you why. Um, Again, I like to learn. I like to understand how people think, and I like to turn that into something that's easy for people to digest. One of the coolest things about security awareness training is getting people to understand a critical cybersecurity concept without using cybersecurity to do the explanation. You know what? If I need you to understand that a bad actor could make their way into your office and simply look at the papers on your desk to discern certain intellectual property information about your company, how easy would it be to have a clean desk policy where they say, Aaron, please clean up your desk at the end of the day like every good third grader? It's not a hard concept, but when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't leave my important papers laying out that somebody could come by, read, or misinterpret what they're reading, and it turned into a bad situation. So I do love security awareness training. We do it at our company to a level that the employees can take that learning back to their company, their families, and actually teach it to their kids.
Wow.
Yep.
All right. Star Wars or Star Trek?
I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm old school.
Pirates or ninjas?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Pirates or ninjas?
All right, pirates, because I lived in North Carolina for a number of years. The most famous pirate in the world, Blackbeard. His real
Okay.
name was Edward Teach, and he was ultimately killed off the coast of North Carolina. But yeah, definitely pirates over ninjas.
All right. And this question specifically, I know you are going to have the answer. It's on passwords, complex alphanumerics, or passphrases.
Passphrases. Easy peasy. You know what? So we did a challenge where I downloaded a password cracker, and we did a little bit of testing with it. And an 8 character password, even though it had some complexity to it, we were able to crack in about 30 minutes. If I can do this, and I am not proficient at being a password cracker, do you know how fast a real bad actor could do it? Probably in less time than that. So we instituted passphrases and made our character requirements significantly longer. That dramatically adds to the amount of time to get the password. Take into consideration, um, just a 12 to 15 character password is like a 30 year. It takes 30 years to crack. When are you going to change your password next? Every 90 days.
Right.
So does it matter that your password's cracked in 30 years? It doesn't matter that it takes 1 year to crack my password. I've changed my password 4 times since then.
Yeah.
I do like a passphrase though.
All right. And the final question, quantum computing having a major impact by 2027, maybe 2037, or never.
Well, it's definitely so it's already making an impact because we already have quantum at the federal government level. Imagine, just think back to the movie that came out back, I think it was in the 80s. It was called War Game, War Games.
Yeah.
Their supercomputer back then was called the Whopper. It was the War Operational something Response. I can't remember the acronym now. Now that certainly wasn't a quantum computer, but it was certainly a supercomputer of the day. So it's not new to our federal agencies and those agencies that need that level of processing power. The question would really be, how soon can people like you and I get access to quantum compute? It's certainly available to universities today, and I dare say it's probably going to be something that you can rent in the future. To say, just like software as a service, like crime as a service, malware as a service, you'll probably get quantum computing as a service where you can go out and rent. I need to rent 30 minutes of time to crunch through something. It's here. It already exists. It's been in existence for a while now. I actually sit down the road from where IBM Watson is in North Atlanta. Man, I see that sign every day. It's just a reminder that it's already here.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for taking the time. This was an awesome chat,
Yeah,
and
my
I
pleasure.
will hopefully see you again very soon.
Looking forward to it, Aaron. Take care. Thanks for having me.